Vertigo is a movie about a cop named Johnny. One night, Johnny and another cop were chasing a bad guy across some rooftops in San Francisco. So they're running rooftop to rooftop, and Johnny slips, and all of a sudden he's hanging off of the side of the building by this gutter. And it's making him all woozy, and he thinks he's gonna die. Then the other cop is reaching down, and he's like, "Grab my hand!" And Johnny is too woozy. So then the other cop slips and ends up falling to his death off the building. But Johnny lives. But now Johnny has acrophobia. And if you're confused because you think acrophobia is a fear of spiders, then you're not alone. I did too. That's arachnophobia. And that's also a great movie. Acrophobia is a fear of heights. Every time Johnny closes his eyes, he sees this guy falling. But he's hopeful that one day he will not be afraid of heights anymore. Well, Johnny is retired after the fall, but one day his buddy Gavin calls him and asks could he stop by his office to talk to him about something. So Johnny goes to Gavin's office, and Gavin's like, "I need a favor." Turns out Gavin wants Johnny to follow his wife, Madeline, around because she's acting spacey. He says she drifts off in the middle of conversations, and she roams around the city aimlessly and doesn't remember where she's been. Johnny's like, "Brother, I'm retired. I got vertigo. I'm wearing a corset because I hurt my back. My plate is full. Plus, I'm a cop. I chase dudes across building tops. I don't want to creep on your wife." And the guy's like, "Please, Johnny, I need a friend." And Johnny's like, so he's following her around the next day, and the first place she stops is a flower shop, and she buys a small bouquet of flowers. Then she goes to a church, like this big cathedral place, and she goes out to the graveyard, and she's just standing there at a grave, and Scotty keeps peeping around tombstones at her. Finally, she leaves, and he goes over to see the name on the tombstone, and it says it's a lady named Carlotta Valdez. Side note, the band Harvey Danger did a song called Carlotta Valdez that's based on this movie, and it's a banger. The album is called Where Have All the Merrymakers Gone, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. Go check it out. The next place Madeline goes is an art museum, and he follows her in, and she's just sitting there staring at this one painting. The painting is of a lady, and she's wearing an old-timey dress, and then Johnny realizes that she's got the same bouquet of flowers as the lady in the painting, and not only that, but she's got the same hairstyle too. So he asks the museum manager who the lady in the painting is, and he says, "Oh, that's Carlotta Valdez. Here's a book about Carlotta Valdez." Then he follows Madeline to a little hotel. Shady. He goes in, and there's this little lady working at the front desk, and he's like, "Who's the woman who is in the corner room?" She's like, "That's Carlotta Valdez's room." And he's like, "I need to speak to her." And she's like, "She's not there today." And he's like, "Bullshit, I just seen her come in." And she's like, "Look, her keys are still on the rack." But he makes her take him up to the room so he can check it out for himself, and sure enough, she's not there. And he even looks out the window and her car's gone. He's like, "Where's her car?" And she's like, "I don't know. I've been with you, bitch." So he drives back to Madeline's house, and he sees her car sitting in the driveway, and the bouquet of flowers is on the dashboard. So what the fuck, you know? So then Johnny goes over to his ex-fiance's apartment. Her name's Midge. And Midge is still low-key in love with Johnny, but they don't talk about it because Johnny's kind of cool on Midge. Midge is a cool chick, though. She's an artist, and she's kind of quirky. She designs underwear or something. She's got a good sense of humor, but Johnny's not about it. He's retired. I think maybe she even designed the corset that he's wearing because he hurt his back. I might be making that up, though. Don't quote me on that one. He's like, "Midge, who would I talk to about the old history of San Francisco?" Midge is like, "Pop Liebel. He owns this little bookstore down the road." And Johnny's like, "Let's head." So they go to Pop Liebel's bookstore. And Pop Liebel is the authority on Carlotta Valdez. He knows her whole life story. He's like, "Oh yes, the house that is a hotel was built for her by a very rich man who fell in love with her. Then they had a baby, but the rich man got tired of her. But he still loved the baby, so he's rich. He just kind of got rid of her on the streets. And then Carlotta Valdez was very sad, and she lived in the house alone, and she just wanted her baby back. But then she went mad, and then she was running through the streets screaming, 'Where is my baby? Where is my baby?' And then ultimately she took her own life." Johnny's like, "Bummer, thanks, Pop." And he goes back to Gavin's house to report the news. Gavin's like, "Makes sense. Carlotta Valdez was my wife's great-grandmother. She even has some of Carlotta's old jewelry." And Johnny's like, "Well, what the fuck, man? It seems like you already know what's up." And Gavin's like, "My wife knows nothing of Carlotta. When she goes into these places and wears her jewelry, she's a different person. So I guess he thinks like his wife is possessed by the ghost of her dead great-grandmother or something. So then he follows Madeline to the Golden Gate Bridge, and she's picking flowers off the bouquet, and she's throwing them in the river, and then she throws the whole bouquet in the river, and then she throws herself in the river. Wait, the San Francisco Bay's not a river. It's like the ocean, right? Well, anyway, Johnny jumps in and saves her. And he's like, Madeline, Madeline, and then he takes her back to his house, I guess. And she's unconscious, but like, I guess he strips her naked because she's laying in bed and she's all covered up and her clothes are hanging out to dry in the kitchen. Meanwhile, he's just having a drink in the living room, staring at her laying in the bed. Perfectly normal. Hospitals didn't exist in the 1950s, I guess. Well, she wakes up naked in this stranger's house and she's only a little bit creeped out by it. She's like, what am I doing here? He's like, you fell into the San Francisco Bay. Come, have a drink, sit by the fire. And she's like, okie dokie. So they start talking, and he's like, so, why you do all this weird stuff for? And she's like, I just like going to the bay sometimes. And he was like, where were you right before this? And she's like, I was shopping. But she wasn't shopping. She was at the museum looking at that painting again. So she's like, where were you right before? And he was like, I was at the museum looking at a painting. She's like, that place looks so cool. I've never been inside. And he's like, what is happening? So anyway, they're talking and they're drinking coffee, and then it starts to get flirty. And then the phone rings, and it's her husband, and he tells him about the jumping into the bay thing, and he's like, Johnny, she is 26. Carlotta Valdez was 26 when she killed herself. And then Johnny hangs up, and he goes back to the living room, and Madeline's gone. Well, the next day, he goes back to Madeline's house, and she's there, so he decides to follow her again, of course. But she keeps going down a million different streets, and he's getting so confused. Then she finally stops at his apartment. Turns out she just wanted to drop off a thank you note for the night before. But before she leaves, he's like, so where are you off to today? And she's like, I'm just going to wander. And he's like, I thought I might wander too. And you want to wander together? And she's like, hop in, boo. So then they go to the Muir Woods where the giant redwoods are. And at first I thought it's where they shot Endor in Star Wars Return of the Jedi. And I got really jealous about it because I always get jealous when I see people go there. I want to go so bad. But it's not. They shot that at Grizzly Creek or someplace like that. But anyway, Madeline starts freaking out in these woods and becomes Carlotta Valdez again. She's like channeling her spirit or something. And Johnny's like, why'd you jump in the bay? And she's like, I didn't jump, I fell. You told me I fell. He's like, why'd you jump? And she's like, don't make me say it. Then she's talking about all these visions she's having, and she's going mad, and she doesn't want to die. And she tries to jump in the ocean again, but he stops her. And he says, I'll watch over you forever, or some romantic crap. And then they have an embrace, and they kiss passionately. So yeah. Basically, he's having an affair with a mentally ill, possessed lady who's married. So then later he starts having visions again, and he's like, let's just ride this out. You just let yourself become possessed, and we will go to all these places and see how the story ends. And they do, and she keeps saying she's having these dreams about she's in a Spanish cathedral. And John figures out where this place is, and it's the Mission San Juan Bautista, which is Carlotta's childhood home, apparently. He takes her there and she runs into a church and climbs all the way up to the bell tower. And John chases her up as far as he can, about halfway, but then his vertigo kicks in. Remember the name of the movie? And she ends up jumping out of the window and plunging to her death. But that's not where the movie ends. So they have a big court trial about it, and the judge or the jury or whoever decides that Madeline jumped to her own death. And basically, Johnny is not at fault, even though the coroner gives him a hard time about it and says he could have done more to stop it. But Johnny, because of all this, has now become depressed, and he's basically catatonic. So they send him to the mental institution for a while. Well, he finally gets released, and when he gets out, he starts wandering around going to all the places that Madeline used to go. He's getting obsessed. Then one day he sees a lady in the streets, and she looks suspiciously like Madeline. He follows her and finds out where she lives, and he just goes up to her apartment unannounced. She lets him in anyway, and he asks her a bunch of questions, because he's a cop. He's very straightforward, and she notices. She's like, you're very direct with your questions, and he's like, yeah. She reminds him of Madeline so much, but she insists that her name is Judy, and she's from Salina, Kansas. Then Judy has a flashback, and it is revealed to us that Judy is a woman that Gavin hired to pretend to be his wife, Madeline. Gavin set up the whole thing for John to follow this woman around, trying to solve a problem that didn't even exist. Madeline's great-grandmother really was Carlotta Valdez, so this helped to validate the story a little bit. But the whole possession thing was totally concocted. He just wanted to get rid of his wife, and I don't really ever understand why he wanted to get rid of her, unless he was just tired of his wife. I don't know. I don't know if it ever touched on that. I drift off sometimes. But anyway, Gavin knew John was afraid of heights, and the plan was to always make him go up to the top of this bell tower because he knew that he would never make it all the way to the top. That way, they could switch out fake Madeline for real Madeline's freshly killed body. And that's what they did. She got to the top of the tower, and they just threw the real Madeline out the window. John would think it was the fake Madeline he'd been following, because she was made up to look like the real one, and fake Madeline could take her money and go live her life. Judy feels guilty, and she writes this big confession letter to Johnny explaining the whole thing, but then she tears it up because she does have feelings for him, and she wants to try it out, see how it goes, It's crazy enough already, might as well. So the two start seeing each other, but John is still obsessed with the old fake Madeline, which is her, and he just doesn't know it yet. He starts making her dress like her. He even takes her to a store and makes them go through a million dresses till they find one that matches the one that Madeline used to wear all the time. Makes her dye her hair the same color and do her makeup the same way, and at first Judy is like, no, this is crazy. But then she's like, you know what, I love this man. I'm just gonna do it. So she does, and for a moment they are so happy. But then they're getting ready to go out, and Judy puts on a necklace, Carlotta Valdez's necklace, that Johnny has seen in pictures, so he knows it belonged to Carlotta. And so then it all clicks. Judy is basically fucked. He drives her back to the mission and tells her she has to play out the whole scene that led to him going crazy. He tells her he knows she's a fake Madeline and tells her to admit it because he's going insane. He forces her to climb back up to the top of the bell tower with him, and Judy confesses to being hired by Gavin. She said he wanted him to play Madeline and act all possessed, and then she begs John to forgive her, because she does love him. So John's like, okay, you dizzy broads and you murder schemes. So they embrace, then a shadowy figure lurks out of the shadows, and it's a nun. And this scares the balls off of Judy, apparently, because she shrieks and jumps backwards and falls out of the fucking bell tower. And she dies, and the nun starts ringing the bell. John's just looking at her body at the bottom of the building. And his vertigo is cured, but he's lost the love of his life. And then the movie goes off. Classic Hitchcock, but it's a long one. It's over 2 hours. Watched it on Amazon Prime if you're interested.